So, hello, Amy. It's so great to talk to you again. I think this is the third time we've come together to do this. So,
Yes,
you know what they say after you do something three times and it's a tradition,
it is. And I'm looking forward to many more of these fabulous salons.
right? So, it's Beltane, May the 1st. So, it's calendar Beltane, not astrological Beltane. Astrological Beltane's coming up in a few days, which I love because it gives us like
A whole season.
a whole season to celebrate. Fertility and the fire and the new season of spring and so many things. So we're recording this, like I said, on May the 1st, 2021. The moon is in Capricorn, and of course, the sun is in Taurus with Mercury, Venus, and Uranus. So a lot of Taurus energy. What else is going on? Pluto's recently gone retrograde in Capricorn. So that's kind of nice. And it does kind of, with the astrological signatures that are coming up for the month of May, it's looking finally like we're getting a good month. And can you kind of feel the shift?
Oh my goodness, yes. It's like the when Beltane comes around, you can feel the sun shift. The planets have all sort of shifted their motion as well.
Yeah, shifted their shit they've been dumping on us for the last several months. Um,
Oh yes.
I think when I wrote about May, um, in my wheel of the years forecast, I said that the temple bosses are going on spring break for the first few weeks of May. Because the temple bosses have been giving us a hard time. So it's, the vaccine is rolling out, things are slowly starting to improve. And I don't know, I think there are, at least for May, things are looking like we may really get that Beltane feeling, that Beltane bliss, right?
Absolutely. By the time the astrological Beltane rolls around, I will be fully vaccinated. I had my vaccine shot. It'll be 2 weeks afterwards. I am thrilled.
That's so exciting. Mine is booked, I think it's next Saturday, my first one. So
Yes.
I'm excited to get that and get that process underway. So perhaps we could see each other again at some point.
I would love that. I think we need to have breakfast at Mystic South again.
I do. That was that was a magical event, wasn't it? Like it was a
It really is.
spontaneous, magical thing. And here we are, like all these months later. Um, so we had a great time talking yesterday, and I could talk to you like for hours and hours without, I think we just, it's like we get talking. So we had to narrow down what we were going to talk about and, kind of bridging us from the astrology of the day and the month ahead to plant spirits. Of course, like it's a short bridge because plant spirits are, so connected with the astrological signatures, the zodiac and the planets. And for me, understanding like the symbolic resonance of plants in that way, like, is this a plant of Mars? Is this a plant that's ruled by water? That really helps me to enter into kind of like the deeper meaning of the plant. And I know we talked about this kind of in our get together that we had about how important like archetypes and symbolism, how these kind of big, they're both like kind of the big things around plant spirit witchcraft, and they're also like the roots under the roots, that if we can see these things as symbolic and archetypal, that how much that really just kind of like opens up our field of vision so we can really see Hecate's garden. So now that I've rambled on about symbols and such, what do you have? What would you like to add?
Love when we sort of look at the way that each plant comes together. We sort of think of these associations and these personality traits of our plants as just having someone been scribbled down however long ago. But there's such a deeper understanding that goes into how each one is understood. If it's a fruit that's produced by lots of sunlight, like an orange, it'll have those solar associations.
Mhm.
The problem comes when you have two plants that are commonly referred to as the same common name, but have completely separate magical practices, magical associations, and even herbal uses. So, for example, bergamot the fruit, as opposed to bergamot, the monarda is sometimes referred to as bergamot. So you have to really look at when you're discussing or you're diving into understanding a particular plant ally, knowing really specifically what they're speaking about, because these two plants have the same common name, but they have wildly different magical uses. The Monarda is a Mercury plant. It's very airy. It's very that understanding. You get that, especially if you just look at the flower. It looks like a nice, cute, spiky haircut, right, ready for spring. Whereas bergamot is this small orangey fruit that is used to flavor Earl Grey tea. They both come from that energy of the sun, plants producing flowers, but it's not just how they've gotten here. It's the idea of how does that plant present itself? How does that plant give us its face? And that spiky haircut and the bright colors and the little show that happens is great for those mercurial associations. You just have to make sure that you understand which plant they're talking about. I've even found one book in doing research for Blackthorn's Botanical Magic where it referred to the citrus bergamot, but it actually gave you the associations of the flower bergamot. And like I said, they're totally separate.
And I think, and this is where, like you said, looking at the plant itself is going to talk about its symbolism. Like like you said, it's got spiky, it's kind of stretching up. It looks quick, it has that quickness about it, that mercurial nature about it, as opposed to something that's more like, it looks like sturdy and earthy or fiery, so the elemental signatures of a plant, when you look at a plant, you will get like a sense of what those elemental signatures could be, but then you need to look in a good book just to see what the standard ones are. I think that's so important. Like you
Yes.
said, I mean, there's when researching entering Hecate's garden, even my beloved Dittany, which I think is probably my favorite. So Dittany of Crete, which is related to oregano and marjoram. There is an American version of it that's different, like you said, not wildly different, but it's different. And then there's marjoram and oregano. And, if you are looking to purchase true Dittany of Crete, which is a little bit of an effort to purchase, that you have to make sure that you're actually getting the proper name, and look at the Latin name of any product. So you're not getting sold, for example, marjoram, which is lovely, but not the same as Dittany, which you can also put on your pizza. But when you put Dittany on your pizza and you invite it in as a plant medicine, then you're eating your pizza as preparation to maybe do some communication with spirits. So it's like a 2-for-1. So it's like knowing and getting back to those astrological properties. If you know a little bit about astrology and you say, oh, this is a plant that's ruled by Mercury, like you said, then you're going to have an instant idea about what the archetype of that plant is. So that's why I think, getting to know plants in terms of their signatures and also their appearance is so important. And, one of the things that kind of after we talked yesterday, I was thinking about, I mean, we had talked about the doctrine of signatures and how plants look like, what their correspondences are, and so on. And then I was also thinking about the principle of sympathy, which I think we didn't touch on our meeting yesterday, but I think sympathy is so important in plant medicine as well. At the symbolic level, the whole idea that plants have a consciousness, plants have emotions, plants have drives and desires, much the same way that we do. I think that's so, excuse me. I think that's so important for someone who's starting into plant spirit witchcraft, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. When we look at how we can incorporate those same ideas, especially if you have a substitution that needs to be created, it's so important to not only look at your materials and figure out if they have the same astrological associations, but to really try and get in touch with that plant ally itself and say, okay, is this something that's really rooted in the same idea as my mystery plant that I have to replace? You can't just throw something in and hope it works.
Right, because they do have that, they do have a complete personality that you looking at the kind of the symbolic aspects of it are like clues. It's like when we're getting to know someone, I always think of like online dating when you
Yes.
starting to get to know a plant. So it's like the correspondences you and I might write about in a book. It's a plant of Mercury, it's ruled by air. It's associated with, I don't know, let's say Hekate is keeper of the keys, and the color blue, whatever profile we give to it. That's just like the little bullet points that someone might put on an online dating profile. It's not the whole story.
Right. It just gives you enough to swipe right or swipe left.
Yeah.
Figure out which way you're going here.
Right. This is going to be just a quick relationship. And then when you talk about making substitutions, it's the same thing. It's like, well, this plant isn't available. So, this one over here has the same list of things. So perhaps if I go a little bit deeper, I'll find that I can date this plant as well. Maybe it's because it's Beltane. I'm feeling the dating metaphors here.
No, it's perfect because not every relationship is meant to be for life. Right? Sometimes you want a companion plant, and sometimes you want, you want to be married to something. You want to have a plant in your life for the rest of your life. Mugwort and I will be together in multiple lives, I'm sure. But maybe turmeric is just a little spring fling.
It's interesting that you mentioned turmeric. I always have it because I do think it's kind of a staple, and it has a lot of good medicinal kind of uses, but it's not one that I'm like enthusiastic about. I feel, but mugwort, you're right, like mugwort, it's like we've been together before, we'll be together again.
I think it's just because I'm anemic. Me and turmeric don't get along well. It keeps the iron out. I need the iron.
Right.
We'll like high five on the way past each other in the office, but
right. Maybe have a drink once. Go for coffee.
Right. Feel it out.
Feel it out. If turmeric has something we need, we'll go and we'll do that coffee where you go and you say, well, I've got this thing and I need to ask you for a small favor, but it's not a big favor. Just right. A thing. It's not like we go to a wedding for me and pretend to be my partner or something like that. It's not a big thing. Yeah. Like, I feel like I ask mugwort for things like that all the time.
But you built a relationship.
Yes, over years, and so many years, right? Decades now. So now I'm just thinking about turmeric and I'm like, oh, turmeric.
I can remember I started my first greenhouse job when I was in school. I was in school for horticulture. I went across the street. I went to the local greenhouse and said, I want a job. And he's like, okay, that's cool. You like herbs. Here, we'll give you can do all the herbs. You can have all the things. I'm like, I want to grow mugwort. He's like, nope, draw a line there at mugwort. So I was right there, probably 16 years old, me and mugwort right there.
Right. And I don't even know how I got started with mugwort. Do you know how you got started with mugwort?
No, I kept looking for mugwort. Mugwort was reaching out. I couldn't find the actual plant. And then one day it just appeared in my yard.
I love that when it's so like, there's that synchrony, right? There's that, that you were reaching out for that plant and it knew you were reaching out for it. Yeah, I think maybe it was when I was about the same age and I discovered that my name Cynthia was an epithet basically of Artemis. And I probably had a Scott Cunningham book and looked up, plants of, I don't know how it happened, but I've had a love affair with mugwort ever since. And I love the look of mugwort. I find it beautiful. I love it here, the way I grow it close to the house to keep it out of the wind, and it grows taller than me, and it's, very mugworty. And I love the smell, although perhaps some of my housemates are not as crazy about the smell. But for me, and I know other people have issues with the smell of mugwort. For me, the aesthetic of mugwort is very pleasing in all ways, visually, the smell of it, the feel of it. I love all those aspects of it. And I think when we're talking about plant spirits, talking about aesthetics is so important because, first of all, aesthetics are really important. If we don't find the plant we're working with pleasing to the senses, it's probably not the right plant for us, or there's something wrong. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful plant in the world. I've never particularly found orchids aesthetically pleasing, for example. I understand other people do. I'm not judging orchids. But I tend to my aesthetic is I like things that are a little bit messy, a little bit dirty. I love decay. I remember when I was first starting out with Keeping Her Keys, I was just learning like the importance of images, like of having an image with some text and how that really helped to convey what I was trying to communicate with people. And I took this picture of a rotting rose. This is a true story. In my garden, because I love roses. I think that to me, that's so aesthetically pleasing. I love the smell, the look of them. And then I put a passage from the Greek magical papyri that was about summoning the spirit of a dead cat. And I thought, to me, this was super aesthetically pleasing. I realized that not everybody shares my aesthetic, which is cool. I know you would have been like, oh, that's cool. But you know, I learned a lot from people's reactions to that. You know, that what's aesthetically pleasing to me is not necessarily aesthetically pleasing to someone else. And I think, so we have to talk about our personal aesthetics. And then because we are living in a social media world these days, I'd love to hear your thoughts about aesthetics and social media and kind of like sharing images, perhaps not one of rotting roses with a passage from an ancient text about using cats in sacrifice. But
It's funny. One of my dearest flowers in the growing sense, that same greenhouse job, my boss had a hedgerow of viburnum that had this tiny little white star flowers and little pink throats and just these bursts of these gorgeous flowers. And you'd walk up to them and just one day during early summer, they just explode with scent. And it's one of the most entrancing, beautiful, incredible scents. I mean, people talk about jasmine and gardenia and roses, and viburnum flowers are by far my most favorite scent. And so I sort of needed that feeling in my house. I went and I found one in the local garden center, and I dug a corner of the yard up right there by the driveway and put in this gorgeous viburnum. And it wasn't until I was halfway back to the front door that I recognized why I found this so aesthetically pleasing. What is the other part of that? Oh yeah, the common name. So one of viburnum's common names is devil's shoestring. So it was a great protective plant. It was going to make sure that anybody who wished to do harm to anyone inside the property boundaries, you know, it would trip them up. It would keep them from causing any harm to anyone in there. So it's very important that we pay attention not just to the things we find aesthetically pleasing, but the understanding that when we move forward, keeping our pieces together is really important for maintaining that magical boundary. Those aesthetics that we understand can be very empowering. By the same token, the flip side of that is if we take too much time and too much energy devoting to recording every magical practice and putting it online, putting it on TikTok, putting it anywhere, we then become so involved in the aesthetic that we lose the magical. So it's important to have balance, just like with anything else.
I think that's so important because like we see so many beautiful images, and certainly like the rise of the use of like stock photography, you know, professional photography. I mean, I use it where it's appropriate, that, you know, this can communicate that things can be perfect when we're sitting there, you know, in our own kitchen or wherever we do our magic. And things don't, you know, I think there's a TV show called Nailed It or something like that, you know, and I think like when we're home doing our stuff, it's like nailed it. It's like, you know, this beautiful, I don't know, let's say, let's say we're doing a spell, we're making a talisman or something. And it doesn't look, the roses start to wilt, you know, everything starts to fall apart. It doesn't look good. And, you know, when we're making like a formula, that, you know, maybe it doesn't look as good as when I share a picture or you share a picture and it's in the bottle and it's all lit right. You know, maybe yours kind of smells a little funny. Um, or maybe things just go awry. And I think if it's aesthetically pleasing to us, before we consider it making it look like perfect for sharing with others, I think that's where that line is, where we have to say, does this look super magical to me? Even if the rest of the world is going to think it's weird to share pictures of dead roses, um, that to me, it resonates and it has a true aesthetic. I would say that's like an illuminated aesthetic when it vibrates with us, as opposed to like, I think sometimes with social media, it can be like almost a shadowy aesthetic where we
Yes.
get almost like possessed by social media and seeing what other people are doing, and we can think it can be kind of like debilitating when you see something that's super perfect. Don't you find?
Oh yes, the egregore, the egregor of Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, they have this immense energy themselves. So we get attracted and enhanced. We spend so much time thinking about that spirit that it becomes about appeasing that spirit rather than making sure that our magic, our witchcraft, our communication is for its own sake. You know, it no longer becomes about the magic, and it becomes, oh, this looks really nice, I better make sure someone knows that I'm doing something cool.
Right, the coolness, and that's certainly a part of the aesthetic of any aesthetic, right? Is like you doing it to look, you know, doing it to look a certain way or to present our image, right? Aesthetic can be about image as well, which is important. Um, but I ultimately think that when it comes to working with the plants, that our whatever we're creating with them, it's meant to be whole, which is not necessarily nice and not necessarily perfect. Nothing ever looks in real life like it does in professional photography on social media. And, you know, just kind of sit with what feels right to you. And if you have like our books or if you have a teacher, you know, check in with them. Don't let social media be how you learn witchcraft.
1,000%. It's a great way to meet friends who feel the same way that you
Yeah.
do. It's a great way to network and create lasting friendships. I mean, I have friends that I met in LiveJournal in 2002, maybe. Those connections can last you for the rest of your life, but it is not how we learn magic. It's not a great tool. It's great for giving you ideas if you already know what you're doing,
Mhm.
but it cannot replace having a genuine learning experience. Watching someone waft an incense stick inside of a glass jar is incredibly aesthetically pleasing to me. But
Mhm.
there's no way for me to feel whether or not that magic is really coming through on their end. You can't feel that the hair stand up on your arm or the muscles on your back giving you chills from somewhere 1,000 miles away on line.
I think that's so true. And I think you really hit on, you know, what it is to know that you're in the flow of doing your magic is when you start to get those feelings, like you get the bodily sensations.
Right. You
Because,
need good.
you know, I was just going to say, because it's working, like when you work with plants, they work on you
Yes.
and you get your body reacts to them in such powerful ways.
Yeah, having a two-way communication is much more empowering and understanding than just being able to watch something that looks nice and makes you feel nice. You know, instead of looking for the dopamine hit, go and spend some time in nature and figure out what they're trying to explain to you, how they want to teach you.
I think that's true. We're getting a little bit of feedback from somewhere. From I don't know where. Give me a second here. Hello. I think we got rid of our feedback.
There we go.
He's playing a little, having some fun with us today. um, so you mentioned communicating with plant spirits. I think this is, why we're in this big, like kind of big picture business about archetypes and signatures and aesthetic. I think it's really helpful to talk about boundaries. Like, I mean, in a practical sense, we have to have boundaries with the plant spirits that we work with, but there's also like so much more to explore in terms of boundaries. And something that, I mean, I'm a certain age, I'm at least a few years older than you. So I've kind of and I mean, you've grown up too, probably with the rise of social media.
Yes.
But I remember, like, when I learned witchcraft, it was before there was social media. It was me in a book in the local witchy shop. This woman who lived in this apartment that I found through friends, like it was this kind of thing.
Mhm.
So
You had to know a person who knew a person.
you had to know a person. So there wasn't this public, like you said, egregore, this public presence, a public construct, even if we want to talk in more like kind of mundane terms, right, about witchcraft. So I learned, way back in the day from this woman in her apartment, about the witch's pyramid. And to me, as much as it is really enlivening and can be uplifting to share on social media and to talk about things that we do, I am really still quite secretive for all of my sharing. Like, I'm very intentional about what I put in a book or what I share, what I don't share. I have really firm boundaries about this. And for me, it really loops back to the witch's pyramid. So I thought I would just read a little section from my book, Entering Hecate's Garden. It's a ritual. I talk about the sacred 7 forces and laws, which are, of course, linked to the planets and astrology, and linked to the witch's pyramid. So I talk about them, and there's a ritual in the book as well. So I just wanted to read this little bit from the section on Hekate, which translates to be silent. Earth covers fire and water stops air. It is the meeting of land, sea, and sky. It is our interface with the external world. It is the protection we need as we pursue wholeness. It is the discipline to keep silent when necessary to protect what is sacred to us. So to me, that speaks to the importance of boundaries and keeping silent about what we keep silent. And right now the sun is in a strong square with Saturn, who is so associated with discipline and secrets and so on. It seems like the perfect time to kind of just touch on this a little bit. So what are some of your thoughts about boundaries and keeping silent, and the connection between boundaries and keeping silent?
So I have a passage from Sacred Smoke.
Okay.
Before we get to the juicy bits, I wanted to look behind the scenes of magical workings. The witch's pyramid is the key to making sure that your magic continues to be successful and doesn't succumb to easy pitfalls. In the witch's pyramid is to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent. And this means you have to understand what you're doing, both by reading books and doing your research. You exert your will and have the drive to complete that spell. It's the tingle you get in your bones that says this is going to work. When you have the nerve to go through with it, all the wishing in the world doesn't amount to the hill of beans if you don't actually do the magic. But lastly, you have to let the magic work without drawing attention to it. No posting about it on social media or calling all your friends to announce you did the best spell to create a new love interest, a new job, or to banish that jerk in 3B. There are a few reasons for this, and they all have to do with having faith in your work. Publicizing a spell lets all the doubts of people who don't believe in what magical people do. They're pouring buckets of water on your spark. Don't let them. All that poo-pooing that can make you doubt yourself, don't you dare. Nothing can kill your magic faster than doubt. If you start doubting yourself, don't even pull out the cauldron, honey. Save those herbs for a rainy day, because believing in yourself is what I do. I've been doing this a long time. I'll even write you a note. Even your magical friends who love and support you may have different ideas about your magical workings and how they should work and why. Even a small variable opens up room for doubt, and we've already talked about what the doubt monster does. Even if your friends don't doubt you and think that you can do it, they may see you with a different outcome. like wanting you to end up with their dorky cousin Chad, who you think is a toad. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. No one wants to be caught in the middle of Chad and his creeper vibe with a bad breath. Just say no. It's important. It's important that when we talk about that keeping silent, there is absolutely zero to do with shame. There's shame in the world, and that's not what we do. It's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is allowing your magic to nurture into the soil, to bloom in its own time without the shadow of doubt, taking away some of that sun that you've worked so hard to provide this baby magical working.
Mhm.
You're fertilizing it with your love and attention, but by letting it go when that magical spell has been cast and sent out to the universe, it keeps you from worrying about whether or not it's going to come to pass, how long it could take to pass, or what way that it comes to us. You just have to know what's going to happen and send it out there, and then go do something completely different. Go do the dishes, go vacuum the floor, do something to get your mind off of what you've just set into motion. Remember, magical thinking is not, I wonder what will happen. You're already thinking about it as it has happened. We're already making sure that we've stamped it into the fabric of reality that this has come to pass. That way it leaves no room for doubt.
I love how you brought up like shame and doubt, and how banishing them is so important. And that's part of our boundary work, because that's work with our establishing boundaries with our shadow side, right? Those fears and those concerns. And it's not about keeping silent because we're ashamed of what we, or because, we think that other people will think we're bonkers. For me, at least, it's because, I keep silent because I know what I'm doing works, and I don't want other people to know. It's like, you don't want people to necessarily be like, whatever she's doing, I want to do it. So please, it's like when you get asked, will you do a spell for so and so because they're having a problem, and it's like, no, thank you. I won't do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with people doing it, but I won't do it for people that are like outside of kind of having a deep relation to the world of spirits, the deeper world. Like, I won't do it for anyone like that, because I just think that there is inherently a lot of mystery, and that we should be proud of what we're doing, but being proud of our accomplishments and proud of our practice doesn't mean that we have to say a thing about it to anybody.
Exactly. I have a dear friend who I've known for, 15 years or so. And during the pandemic, she found witchcraft and decided this is something she wanted to pursue. And it seemed like 5 minutes later, she was offering to do spells for money for people. And it's a slippery slope, because you're still just trying to figure out what you know, why you know it, and where you got it from. But putting that added pressure on. Oh, we have another Victoria.
Mercury's come back. I think he's gone. I think it was just a flyby.
If we are able to understand where we're coming from without the undue influences of people who honestly could just want something for themselves and aren't necessarily invested in your understanding and your growth, it can be doing a disservice to yourself.
Definitely. And if you don't have those boundaries, and if you're and I understand enthusiasm, right? I mean, we figure this out, and we have that thrum in the soul, and we're happy, so we want to share with other people. So I understand enthusiasm, but I ultimately think the practice of like a deeper witchcraft is about developing wisdom. That's really what we're doing. And so it's good to be enthusiastic. Tell it to the plants. They'll listen.
Absolutely.
They'll be happy to hear. So I think that brings us to this whole thing, and you mentioned it earlier, so I want to walk us back to talking to plant spirits. And for me, with talking about boundaries, I always feel like there's a concern that we can have boundaries that get so rigid that nothing gets in there, impermeable, impenetrable, right? It's like we become this fortress, like no one's going to mess with me. And I teach a meditation that's available on the Keeping Her Keys SoundCloud, which I call the Take No Shit, Do No Harm
Hmm.
meditation, or the strong back, soft front. And when we are starting to develop these relationships with our plants, I think that's so key, is that we have boundaries with the plants, because plants can possess us.
Hmm.
Really strong plant spirits can possess us the way we get possessed by social media. I think I have certainly, perhaps at times, been maybe looking back to like early days with mugwort, or certainly if you get into like some of the psychedelics, like ayahuasca. I think a lot of people are, I mean, I've used it. I don't like things that make me throw up. Um, but you see a lot of people who, to me, it's like, oh, you've been possessed by the spirit of ayahuasca. This is all you talk about. This is all you think about. You can't wait to do it again. So there's all that kind of like not having good boundaries in that area. Like, no, I am the sovereign one here. I understand that you are a spirit onto yourself, a true archetypal force, but I'm still sovereign, and so I have a boundary about how I'll let a plant work on me. um, so with going into it with that idea that we're going to be sovereign, what are your tips for communicating with plant spirits?
One of my favorite ways is to actually be physically present with the same plant that you're attempting to work with. For example, you can have an essential oil to inhale. You can have a piece of a leaf to connect you and ground you, to really keep you grounded in the idea of this is the plant that we're working with just this moment. If it's something that's potable, you can create a tea with it. You can create, something that's nice and can take that spirit into yourself. Because while you're in a trance state, in a meditative state, being able to reach out to the greater spirit of peppermint, the greater spirit of frankincense or cardamom, being able to have a piece of that within your hand, within your body, makes it a lot easier for us to focus on that relationship and creating that dialogue, because you're involving more senses. The more senses you involve, the more grounded that experience becomes. So reaching out, going to your sacred place. A lot of us have our own internal landscape that we've spent years building, and sort of journeying, taking that step towards meeting with cardamom or lavender or uh, patchouli, understanding that that plant will or won't decide to come and meet with us. It is completely at their discretion. You can't force them. Uh, but having that interview space is a great place to really get that dialogue started. Just like we've both done interviews for our podcast. We've been interviewed for each of our books. We know what interviews are like. Where did you grow up? What made you interested in witchcraft? How did you get your start? Plants are the same way. You do that background information, you do that background search, and sort of get an idea, get the lay of the land. Patchouli is great to work with money. It's physical energy. It's associated with sex. Okay, going into that space, either by holding a patchouli leaf or maybe a gentle inhale of some patchouli essential oil, will get you dialed in the same way we dial into intuitive clients. I'm going to ask you your name and your date of birth just so I can zero in on your energy. I'm going to talk to patchouli so I can zero in on that energy. There are 986 members of the Pagostemum family. The only one of them is Pagostemum cabalin or patchouli. So genera is very generic. Make sure that you're dialed into the right plant, which is why Latin names can really help. So have those interview questions, sort of figure out how can we work together. We don't use the word use because we're not looking for an extractive relationship. We're looking to work in concert with these plants and develop those relationships that can last you in a lifetime.
I think that's so true. Like having some kind of physical sample of the deeper spirit that you can touch, smell, see, drink, rub on your skin, even like listen to, if it's a plant out in nature, like listening. I had in my imagination, it just popped in like, we don't have oak trees on the property, but so I go to a place not too far from here that has like an oak grove, and I like to lay on the ground and listen to the physical noises that the oak tree makes.
Mhm.
And then I find that helps me connect to the spirit of oak, which of course is such a mighty, mighty plant spirit to connect with. So I think those are really, really great tips. And I love how you hit upon like our inner temple, you know, the inner nation. Some of us build a whole nation or continent, not just a temple. That's our sacred space, like the temenos within. And that is where we'll experience that deeper medicine of the plant. And, you know, just for me, one of the most important aspects of teaching students plant spirit witchcraft is do you understand, do the profile, read the profile, do the interview, and then have a conversation. And that conversation takes place in your imagination. So let the plant come to you as it wills. You know, don't try to force, you know, if you're working with a certain potion or so on, and everyone else is seeing beautiful angels, for example, and you're not, then trust that medicine that if you maybe you needed to see a disturbing image, because that's an invitation, you know, to solve your problem or whatever, you know, whatever brought you in relation to that medicine.
Yeah, it's really important, especially I think even more so if it's something that we have a physical allergy to experience it in your spirit temple, to experience it in your inner landscape. You can understand what that relationship is bringing to your personal practice. Myself, my mother, all my sisters are deathly allergic to rose. Oddly enough, my mother, who is deathly allergic to rose, named my older sister Rose. Like, what are you experiencing with that relationship? What are you putting out into the universe with that relationship?
Mhm.
And how can it add or take away from your personal inner landscape and your magical practice?
So, and you could work with cards, or if you can look at images, you know, certainly that can help you to connect with like the more archetypal spirit of a particular plant. And I like how you mentioned like getting into the family and the genus of a plant. You know, that, like you said, there's hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of plant spirits. And it's if we have something that can help tether us to the specific one, I find it's really beneficial than if you just kind of go wandering in Hecate's garden, although I am going to lead us into a meditation very soon, where we are going to go wandering in Hecate's garden and see what plant spirit wants to come forward to us. So this has been such a great chat. Um, if you are watching this as a recording or listening to it as a podcast, we recorded this live, like I said, on Beltane. So there's going to be a meditative recording that you can access on our different platforms. And for those who are attending live, there'll be some bonus content as well that they'll have access to. So thank you so much. I guess before we wrap up the podcast, Amy, let's talk a little bit about what you're working on now and where they can find you and what you've already got out there in the world.
Okay, my most recent release was Blackthorn's Botanical Brews. So if you'd like to learn more about creating your own magical teas to commune with those botanical spirits, this is a great book to start with. There's also potions within here that do include alcohol. There's magic using alcoholic beverages. However, for our sober friends, there are sober substitutions. So we make sure that we denote that. I want to make sure that everyone feels included in this magical practice. My next project, I'm so excited. I've just turned in my manuscript to my incredible editor, and Judica has Blackthorn's Protection Magic, A Green Witch's Guide to Self-Defense in her hot little hands right now. So that'll be out not quite soon enough. It talks about magical protection for mind, body, and spirit, as well as includes an entire section on physical self-defense, things like escaping rope, duct tape, zip ties, someone's following you, what do I do? Things that happen in the real world, because as much as we love and appreciate our magical spirituality, sometimes it can be dangerous to us on a physical level. I've gotten death threats. I've had people show up at events. I had a man show up at my house with a claw hammer threatening to harm my pets and burn down my house. Like, these are things that happen in the real world. And as scary as they can be, they're less so when you're prepared and you know what to do and how to handle them. So we'll talk about those things in Blackthorn's protection magic, and it should be out late fall, early winter. For those of you who are visiting us today, we also have a little bit of something special. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think we should talk about that. What do you got? What's your treat?
So right on amyblackthorn.com, you can see it's the very first thing it's listed for today. I have a Beltane anointing oil that is going to be perfect for today. Something you can make at home, very easily find it, the materials for it. So the first ingredient is lavender essential oil, and that's 5 drops of lavender for love, health, and for peace. Then 5 drops of tangerine essential oil for purification, for joy, and a little bit of physical energy, and try and break out the last of those remaining winter blahs. And the last is that grounding, incredible patchouli for physical energy, sex, and it helps bring in money. So it's definitely good for the spring. You can just add those together with a 1/4 cup of your personal favorite carrier oil, and it makes a great anointing oil for not only bless it and keep it on hand, but when you need that energy later, it's too hot in the summer, you feel lethargic, let's break out a little bit of that anointing oil for your magical practice. So you can find that recipe right on amyblackthorn.com, or please feel free to contact me if you found it or you need to act a little bit. Yes, sweet orange is a great substitution for tangerine, even mandarin essential oil. So absolutely, great question.
Fabulous. It's a great question. And you have lots of like oils and teas available on your website as well?
Yep, spell candles, oils, teas, oils that were blended from Blackthorn's Botanical Magic. And those of you who have Blackthorn's Botanical Magic on your bookshelves, reminder that there is a substitution guide in the very back. So when you're looking at the recipe index, those essential oils that are listed in the right-hand column, that's a ready-made essential oil substitution list. So feel free to look at that with new eyes.
I think that's fabulous that you included that in the book. So I've got Entering Hecate's Garden out if you are interested in a more psycho-spiritual, mythic, poetic, and practical approach to plant spirit, magic, medicine, and mystery. My next book is going to be Entering Hecate's Cave, which is a deep, soulful dive into the journey of healing into your own wholeness. So that will probably be out in late 2022. And as always, you can apply to join the Covina Institute, my school. We do a new curriculum every month based on an epithet of Hekate. We always have a plant that we include, a stone, a ritual, and so on. This month, we're exploring one of my favorites, Dittany of Crete. So, and you can learn more about everything in the Keeping Her Keys universe on keepingherkeys.com. My offering for all of our fabulous participants today is the pink potion, which we've been working with in the school for the last little while. We had our pink full moon lodge the other night, which was a joyful event. So this pink potion has rose petals, hawthorn berries, and Dittany of Crete, which you can substitute. You can see Entering Hecate's Garden for more and making substitutions the way I teach it. And you can find that by going to keepingherkeys.com/free resources. It doesn't appear anywhere else on the website. These are little kind of hidden bonuses for people. So if you type in free resources after the keepingherkeys.com, you'll find that. So thank you so much, Amy. This has been so wonderful. I look forward to, we'll have to do this again in the fall.
So for those of you who want to check out my classes, spell kits, candles, teas, any of that beautiful magical stuff, for the next 2 weeks until the end of May 15th, there's a 20% off coupon code for you guys for being with us, paying attention, and sticking with it. So 20% off everything on the website. Just enter code PLANTS with a capital P at checkout, and it'll give you 20% off the entire store.
That's awesome. So plant, capital P, L,
Capital
A,
P,
N, T, plants,
S, plants, plural plants.
plants. Okay, plants. All right, thank you again. So everyone joining us live, just a reminder, we're going to shift to the meditation